Sadhna Deshmukh, madam. She is the owner of Suyash Nursing Home and past president SOGS and working as a consultant at Ashwini Sahakari Rugnalaya for more than 10 years. Dr. Milind Shah, sir, he needs no introduction, but just in two lines, he is present Solapur IMA president and working with huge courage in this COVID pandemic. He was one of the panelists for Foxy guidelines on leukorrhea, and at present he has been elected as vice president elect ISPAT. Dr. Madhuri Dabde, madam. She is one of the directors of Krishna Mai Nursing Home, working as consultant at Ashwini Sahakari Rugnalaya for more than 7 years and past president SOGS. Dr. Swati Golwalkar, madam. She is a senior obstetrician and gynecologist working at Mohor for more than and practicing for more than 35 years and has a huge obstetric and gynec experience. Dr. Shashikant Umbardan, sir. He is the owner and consultant of Mangalya Nursing Home and Atharva Fertility Center. And Dr. Praveen Khare, sir. He is the owner of Tapasya Nursing Home, Solapur. At present, a COVID warrior and COVID in charge and has treated more than 5,000 patients in his COVID center and has done more than 25,000 laparoscopic tubectomies at Solapur and periphery. I welcome all the panelists. Lastly, I would like to welcome all the SOGS members. Now, I would like to hand over the mic to our president, Dr. Abuli Velankar, madam.
A warm welcome to all the seniors, colleagues, and all the members of the society. I welcome you all to this clinical meeting. Today, we have a panel discussion on vaginal discharge. In gynec practice, vaginal discharge is a very common complaint, and almost every third patient in our OPD has the complaint of leukorrhea. Though we as gynecologists feel that these complaints for the patients are benign and may be simple to treat, but from the patient's point of view, the symptoms are often distressing and affect their social and marital life. There are newer modalities of treatment and a vast range of drugs now available. But yet the patients are roam from one gynecologist to the other for the same complaints. So to discuss the various aspects of this vaginal discharge and its investigations and treatment, we have well-known and experienced gynecologists of our society as panelists today. We have Dr. Milind Shah also, and we are fortunate that Dr. Milind Shah had been a panelist and a committee member for the Foxy guidelines for the vaginal discharge when they were set over there. Even if we turn out to some specialization of gynecology, like infertility, laparoscopy, or surgery, we always come across patients of leukorrhea. And so to discuss this topic, we'll start this session now.
Good evening, all. I welcome all the panelists. I welcome all the panelists and all SOGS members, and I'm sure that this is going to be a very informative panel on vaginal discharge. So we'll start with first case, and this is a 16 years old girl comes with complaint of thin watery vaginal discharge, no other complaints. She is very much disturbed with the symptoms. And Dr. Sadhna Deshmukh, madam, I would like to ask you, how will you proceed if such girl comes to your OPD? Dr. Sadhna Deshmukh, madam.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
madam.
can you hear me?
Yes, madam, please.
Yes. A 16-year-old girl, when she comes with a thin, watery discharge without any other symptoms, I would first like to ask her and the mother the history. In the history, I would like to ask her mother whether she has any other symptoms like itching, pruritus, which is obviously not been asked. How is her menstrual hygiene? How is her local hygiene? Whether her nutrition is a balanced nutrition, we would like to ask her mother. In all these cases, examination is not mandatory if there is no other history. On local examination, if the mother insists or the patient has a lot of distress, if her symptoms are distressful, then
Madam,
in that case,
excuse me, madam. This girl, she is not having any complaint. Only complaint is
okay,
thin
yes,
watery discharge.
yes, yes. I would just like to examine if they insist. Otherwise, examination is not mandatory in these patients. I would just like to do counseling of the patient and the mother that this is often a physiological discharge and this is a leukorrhea, and in I would like to do proper counseling and come back if any other symptoms come. If drugs, if infection is only proved, otherwise no drugs is needed, and only proper local hygiene and menstrual hygiene is advised. This is often due to anovulatory cycles and estrogenic predominance and stimulation of the vaginal and cervical glands due to hyperestrogenism. That was
Okay, so with thin watery discharge, only you will only counsel the patient that this is physiological, quite natural, and maintenance of hygiene is important. So if such patient comes with foul-smelling vaginal discharge, Madhuri madam, will you have anything else to ask?
She has foul smelling discharge. It means that it is pathological.
Right.
See, there are many natural protective mechanisms in teenage, unmarried girls rather. That is approximation of vagina, presence of hymen, normal inhabitants maintaining vaginal flora and pH of vagina. So all these mechanisms protect this girl from getting infected. When she is complaining of foul smelling discharge, so we should ask her proper history,
Okay.
whether there is itching, how much discharge is there, the color of the discharge. Next. So the causes are foreign body in the vagina, that is the
Okay.
commonest cause. And nowadays we should ask about sexual activity also, even though she is unmarried. Secondly, diabetes mellitus. And if she is douching her vagina daily, and if she's using any deodorants or spray, because many TV ads are there, and usually girls are fond of these deodorants and spray. So we should ask her history. And local examination, we should definitely do local examination, whether there is a labial swelling, not PV, only local examination, whether there is a labial swelling or that is edema, or is there any redness or scratch marks if she is having this itching.
Okay.
Next. So the laboratory investigations we should do are complete blood count to see her hemoglobin level and whether there is a increased count, WBC count. Blood sugar is mandatory as she has foul smelling discharge. Urine routine also should be done because many times it is associated with urinary tract infections. And if at all there is discharge outside the labia, that is outside the vagina, then we can collect it and see for whether it is trichomonas or candida infection. Next. And treatment part is tablet petronidazole, 400 milligram BID for 7 days, and local clotrimazole cream is indicated. And say no to vaginal wash solution. So we should give some time in our OPD to convince her not to use such vaginal wash which daily they see on this watch on TV, and so they should not use this vaginal wash. And nowadays girls use jeans and they are very tightly fitted, so we should advise them not to use tightly fitted clothes, and they should use cotton in innerwears also, and keep the girls should keep perineal area dry after bath, because they are always in hurry, and we should insist them to give some time and keep the perineal area dry. That's about this. If patient comes with foul smelling vaginal discharge.
Very, very well explained. So, proper history taking and time given for proper counseling is important for such unmarried girls, is the take home message. So,
I would.
any,
Hello. Can I add something?
yes, madam.
Here I would like to mention that it is very important to ask history of sexual abuse also,
Oh,
because many a times patients may hide, and you have to dig in the history of sexual abuse, which may lead to vaginitis also. That's what just I wanted to add.
Very important point.
Yes.
So, if
Yes,
we go,
thank you.
Uh, so as we know, leukorrhea is the excessive normal white discharge, usually thin and could have mild odor, but usually it does not come with itching and strong odor. It most of the time this is physiological because of high levels of estrogen, and it is premenarchal, mid-cycle, or premenstrual. So we move on to next case.
Our next case, the question is for Dr. Milind Shah. There is a 26-year-old patient married since 2 years. She's complaining of itching over the vulval region with vaginal discharge. What history will you take? What examinations? What will be the findings on vaginal examinations? What investigations will you do?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Aboli. At the onset, I must say big thanks to SOBG for this wonderful opportunity to speak on very important topic in day-to-day work, whereby we find the quite big spectrum from physiology to even up to the malignancy, where we'll have to be very careful while dealing with these cases of vaginal discharge. And that's why I think I must congratulate Aboli and Archana for choosing this topic, because as you said very correctly, when we sat for those guidelines in Jaipur, I still remember so much churning, so much literature available, those Nugent criteria, EMSEL criteria, and all those. Then I realized, yes, we need to go into the details of this. So whenever such women, she comes to you, first and very important thing, which we have noticed in day-to-day practice. Today we are going to have a very practical thing. Quite often, those are not addressed seriously. But any discharge, could be physiological or pathological, need to be properly examined. That is very important. So clear per speculum examination is very important. That's why always and always recall my OPD days in the Vaishyampayan Medical College, whereby I still remember we always used to put the speculum. We used to have the wet smear. We always used to put the KOH, to the VIP test. We always used to scream whenever you used to see the flagella and the trichomonas and candida, actually the hypicans. So those hypies were always very, very interesting for as a student to all of us. And the same we adopted in our practice also since last 30 years. So whenever we get such a lady of 26 years old, we definitely will take a detailed history, how long she's having this discharge, whether she's having any other actually symptoms or the signs related to the vaginal inflammatory response. That means whether she's having redness, whether she has itching, whether she has dyspareunia, and all those history need to be taken. And just perspective examination and the wet smear itself is very catchy to diagnose which type of infection this is, if it is a pathological. For example, suppose I find the discharge is something like a non-specific vaginal discharge. It is quite often goes in favor of bacterial vaginosis. Whenever we see the sort of frothy or yellowish discharge, we suspect trichomonas. curdy discharge with definitive, actually the white spots goes in favor of actually the candidiasis. And by doing the wet smear and whip test, quite often I'm able to even distinguish or confirm my diagnosis, and accordingly we can manage that particular cases. Once we have diagnosed that, we again need to go to the etiology. Why she's getting this discharge? And we know there is a very varied etiology for this particular discharge. Could be related to the her sexual intercourse as well. Could be a part of her sexually transmitted infection. Could be just because of her hygienic practices which she is not observing properly, or could be because of her other issues related to the vaginal flora. So once that is diagnosed, then we'll have to give the treatment according to the cause of that particular infection. If it is trichomonas, definitely our choice is always to go with the metronidazole, or whenever it is a candidiasis, we go with the actually fungal treatment. The real challenge comes with the bacterial vaginosis, or when it's a mixed infection. Quite often it is not necessary that only one type of infection will be prevalent in that particular vaginal site. So that time syndromic approach, which is again a very essential, and when government promotes that, basic idea was to manage or address the sexually transmitted diseases, but that is applicable to the vaginal discharge as well. So I think we can go this way systematically. We are able to get rid of that particular infection. And last and very important point is addressing the partner also. Especially in country like ours, India, the partner is always a single partner and husband is. So we need to treat the husband also whenever we are treating this discharge to make it very comprehensive and to avoid the recurrence.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Milind Shah. You have nicely guided us and explained the importance of examination and importance of WIPS test and methodology towards the investigation and examination. Thank you, Dr. Milind Shah, sir.
Sir, what is your what you would like to say something on the investigation part, since you were in the guidelines panel?
Yes.
And that guidelines suggest that you should go for pH test, WIPS test. I don't think many of us are doing all those tests in the OPDs. So how much these tests are important, and what will you say about this?
Yeah, this is a very good question, because as I told you, I always correlate my actually the teaching with my clinical practice. And that's why in my clinic, and eventually when I started working with even with the Banashankar Hospital with Dr. B.B. Kulkarni, he was very much fond of wet smear. He was also very much fond of taking pap smear at the same time. So we always do the wet smear in my clinic as well. Even my technicians, we have trained them that way. We take one drop, we put normal saline and we see under microscope. So that is very routine practice. And whenever required, we take even pap smear also, because we know that this is the 26 years old age where many of the dysplastic changes can actually found. Suppose there is a real actually any precursor or the any factors which are related to the carcinogenesis. Second thing, once we do that particular test, we need to investigate the other investigations like CBC, urine, and blood sugar. You'll be surprised to know quite often the diabetes we have diagnosed with vaginal discharge. And I always say with fun that whenever I see cardiac discharge in the third decade of the life, I tell her, now you're diabetic. And she says, no, I have tested my diabetes. And when they go to the laboratory, they say it's 300 and 200. So we do the blood sugar level. We also do the HIV also, because we know that suppose a woman comes with repeated actually vaginal infection, there's every probability that she may have got the sexually transmitted disease as well. Coming to the pH, yes, pH was not very practical to do in our setup. Eventually, when we started getting some glows, which were having a tip with which we used to diagnose the pH, we have used, but it is not a very common use. Only in selected patients, we can use those glows to diagnose the pH. Now, why this pH? Because we need to understand or categorize them in the different categories as far as the treatment is concerned, and which are the Nugent's criteria, whereby we take in account the pH, we also take in account the vaginal inflammatory response, and accordingly we decide how to go ahead with this particular differentiation of the infection. Apart from that, I think these are the only tests which we do. Anything else you do? Anyone?
Anyone from
Yes,
the
anyone can
panelists would
add
like
this,
to
yeah.
add some?
On wet mount, we can see clue cells in bacterial vaginosis, and in trichomonas vaginosis, we can see the trichomonads on the wet mount.
Okay, so the panelists, all the panelists say that proper investigation, categorizing the infection, and then treatment. That is very important in case of vaginitis. Slide. Next slide. So in the FOXY guidelines also, it is mentioned that pH test should be done, and if it is more than 4.5, that indicates either candidal infection, and if it is more than 5, then the diagnosis goes more in favor of bacterial vaginosis. And other tests are also mentioned, like AMSEL diagnostic criteria and Nugget's diagnostic criteria. Then we move on to our third case.
1 second, I want to add on this. The AMSEL criteria are very clear that whatever we said just now, as I told you in our UG days in 1985, those are the same criteria. Only thing we never actually call them AMSEL criteria, but we always used to have the weight test, we used to do the WIP test, and accordingly we used to diagnose the clue cell, as Dr. Khare said very correctly. Those cells covered with all those dots we used to say, and we used to call them as a clue cells suggestive of bacterial vaginosis.
Thank you, sir.
Coming to the Nugent, that includes certain more additional things,
yes.
but that could be
That is the score system.
Score system, yeah.
From
Yeah.
0 to 7. So now, Dr. Shashikant, since you are in infertility practice, this is for you. You have taken a patient of infertility for intrauterine insemination, and during the procedure, you notice there is a yellowish thick vaginal discharge. Will you proceed with the procedure, or will you cancel the procedure because of vaginal discharge?
First of all, madam, we should not come with this situation at the time of IUI.
Yeah, but every time you are not going to examine the patient.
that
Initially,
means-
you examine the patient, and then if the second or third IUI.
Yes.
This,
If the patient is coming with a recent white yellowish discharge, this can be a mixed infection. But while doing the treatment, you can explain it to the patient that you are having the discharge, she is having vaginitis. You should not cancel the treatment
Okay.
cycle. Yes, but you should explain the patient that this infection will lead to the reduced chances first. This infection can have the effects on the tube and endometrium. And majority of the times when there is gonorrhea and chlamydia, generally majority of the times chlamydia is the causative factor for the tubal infertility. So such patients will be having the effects on the tube. And if you are doing second or third IUI, better you should investigate this patient first. You should do the laparoscopy for this patient, evaluate their tubes, and see the results.
yeah, that is later part, but at the time of
At the
IUI,
time of IUI, I will
continue
proceed
with the
my
procedure?
Yes.
Okay, so you will not cancel or
No.
treat
I
the
will
patient?
not, right at that time, I will do my procedure. No treatment at that time. We'll wait till the result for 15 days. If negative, treatment as per the white discharge, whatever we have just seen. If it is positive also, if the pregnancy test come positive, you can give the vaginal either candid, or you can give the candidate with clotrimazole addition.
Okay.
So what treatment till the test comes positive or negative? Till then, what the treatment
See,
will
madam,
be?
only
Not-
thing you have,
no
we have
treatment will be
no
necessary.
treatment in
Okay.
between.
Anybody else have different?
Not different, very true, but the only little change I may actually adopt in my practice, that instead of IUI, I may do the intracervical, actually the IU or the intravaginal insemination, because I'm worried whether this infection will get ascended in the upper genital tract. Because we always see what are the late outcomes of the complication of this vaginitis. It always leads to the upper genital tract, can lead to the endometritis, can lead to the tubal blockage and the PID. And in that case, sometimes it depends on the scenario. It's very difficult to apply the rule of thumb, but that is the one of the alternative one can think about.
So proper counseling and prior examination prior to IUI, that is important in this case. So, Milind sir, what do you feel? What is the effect of this vaginal infection on ART outcome? Whatever procedure you do, IUI or IVF, is there any effect on implantation or
Yes.
result?
Yeah, there are actually n number of papers we'll find in the literature where they found there's a negative outcome whenever there is actually infection and we are landing, the patient is subjected for the ART. And that's why it's very, very essential to treat the patients. Rather, every IVF consultant, as you must agree with me, when she comes to the stimulation itself, we give a course of antibiotic to confirm that this is a sterile environment we are going to deal with, to have a more actually good outcome as far as the conception is concerned, the implantation is concerned. So that is a routine practice observed in majority of the clinics, and that's why the previous scenario, what we said about that patient suddenly comes with discharge is very less likely, and very nicely told by even Dr. Shashikant also. But always and always better to see that the infection is treated before subjecting patient to the stimulation.
So this is a very nice article, expert review published in American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology 2021, and they conclude that women with lower prevalence of vaginal lactobacilli were less likely to have successful embryo implantation than those with higher prevalence of lactobacilli, and women with lower microbial diversity and those with higher proportion of abnormal vaginal microbiota were more likely to have poor reproductive outcomes following IVF. So it is always better to treat the infertile patient for this vaginal infection.
Now our next case, the question is for Golwalkar madam. Is she present?
Yes, yes.
What is the importance of maintenance of perineal hygiene in a woman? And do you advise in intimate vaginal wash? She's there. Hello, Golwalkar madam. Can you hear us? Please unmute yourself.
Dr. Swati is trying to connect to audio. I think.
Madam, please unmute yourself.
She's trying to do that. She's getting connected to audio. It appears.
She is not unmuted.
Connecting to audio. Yeah.
We'll come back to this question after a few minutes and we'll move. So, I would like to ask Dr. Khare, sir, what is the treatment for this vaginal infection? What are the drugs?
Yeah. With investigation and history, we have to come to know the specific infection. If it is candidal infection, on history, if we know that it is mild to moderate and disease, then we can go for clotrimazole single dose 500 milligram vaginal tablet, or clotrimazole 200 milligram 3-day treatment, or clotrimazole 100 milligram 7-day treatment, or we can apply 2% applicator full of clotrimazole vaginally for 7 days. Or instead of that, if these drugs are not available, then we can go for nystatin 1 lakh international unit OD for 2 weeks. And if the candidiasis is recurrent, that is complicated fungal infection, then in that case, if the infection is recurrent, that means it is more than 4 times per year, per year. And if it is having that vaginal pH is normal, and we are on wet mount, we see that budding yeasts are there, not hyphae. If budding yeasts are there, then it is chronic, complicated candidiasis. In that case, initial dose of fluconazole, either it may be 100, 150 or 200 milligram every third day for three doses. And for maintenance, we can go again fluconazole 100, 150 or 200 milligram weekly for minimum 6 months if it is chronic candidiasis is there. And along with that, we can, if it is a perennial infection, local azoles we can try for in that case. And if it is associated with diabetes and immunocompromised patient, HIV patient, and we have to go for this treatment directly, chronic candidiasis. And on investigation, we found that the disease is bacterial vaginosis. In bacterial vaginosis, we have drugs like metronidazole, 500 milligram, BD for 7 days, and clindamycin, 300 milligram, BD for 7 days, tablets. Along with that, we can go for local vaginal stem dose. And on investigation, we come to know that disease is trichomoniasis. In that, we can go for single dose of metronidazole 2 gram or metronidazole 500 milligram BD for 7 days. And if trichomoniasis associated with resistance is there, then metronidazole 1 to 2 grams for 2 weeks we have to give. And along this trichomoniasis infection is there, then we have to not forget partners. This is a sexually transmitted disease. When we, along with the this female partner, we have to treat male partners, and they should not have contact before completion of treatment or remission of disease. And if this disease, we know that gonorrhea. For gonorrhea, we have single dose intramuscular ceftriaxone 150 milligram we can give, or otherwise cefixime 400 milligram. And other disease remaining is that chlamydia. In chlamydia, we have to give tablet azithromycin 500 milligrams single dose, or other is doxycycline 100 milligram BD for 7 days.
Depending upon the type of infection, you'll choose the antibiotic.
Yeah.
Madhuri madam, would you like to add something?
I have presentation, a good presentation with me. Can I?
Yes, please. Madam.
The Galaxy 121 is waiting on the chat.
So we should treat the infection accordingly. Accordingly, it means that if it is Trichomonas vaginitis, bacterial vaginosis, or candidal vaginitis. Next, please. As he rightly said, Dr. Khare, trichomonal vaginitis, the metronidazole is the drug of choice, and 400 milligram thrice a day for 7 days, and or tididazole 2 grams once a day. A single dose therapy is there. And locally, we can use clotrimazole pessaries or betadine creams also, or betadine pessaries. Yeah. In trichomonas vaginitis, if recurrence is there, then metronidazole 200 milligram single dose, or metronidazole 400 milligram TDS for 7 days. This is the original regime we can use, or we can repeat the same dose. But if it fails, then metro 2 grams, that is 2000 milligrams, once a day for 7 days should be given. And in this case, the male partner should be treated to avoid recurrence. In bacterial vaginosis, the antibiotic we can give orally or locally. Antibiotic, the choice of antibiotic is again metronidazole, and the dose is same, that is 400 milligram thrice a day for 7 days. And here we should use clindamycin 300 milligram BD for 5 to 7 days, and local clotrimazole vaginal pessaries or cream, or clindamycin pessaries or pessary or cream. And here is the role of probiotic that we can see later on. Next slide. If it is recurrent bacterial vaginosis, then repeat the same dose again, and or metronidazole gel, that is 0.75% vaginally twice a week for 4 to 6 months should be used. And here the partner's treatment is not recommended. Next. And third is the candidal vaginitis, where the oral or local administration is recommended. That is, if it is uncomplicated, then fluconazole 150 milligram single dose is sufficient. But if it is complicated, then fluconazole 150 milligram every 72 hours, as Dr. Khare said, the 3 doses are required. And if it is recurrent, then fluconazole 150 milligram once a day for 10 to 14 days, followed by 150 milligram, that is one tablet, once a week for 6 months should be given to avoid recurrence. And if here also, if the partner is asymptomatic, then there is no need to treat him. If he is symptomatic, then and then only we can treat him. And one more thing is a probiotic. Yeah. Next.
We have a question.
Okay,
We have a
then it's
question on
okay. Then it's
probiotic later.
So very well explained by both the panelists. Anybody want to add something? Any drug? We'll move.
Welcome, Golwalkar madam.
तुम्हाला आवाज येतोय? येतोय आवाज?
हो येतो.
We will go to, after we finish this question, we will go to the question to next question to Golwalkar madam.
Yes. This is a very good presentation Madhuri has shown to all of us to make it very systematic approach towards this infection. There are certain drugs in practice we realize that we can have a choice of using them. For example, I realize that metronidazole always gives a lot of less compliance from the patient point of view because of metallic taste. So our choice is giving secnidazole with quinolines, and that combination always gives us a better result as far as the compliance is concerned. I want to learn from my panelist friends, what is your experience on that? Whether you tried that giving secnidazole instead of tinidazole or the metronidazole, where the metallic taste problem is comparatively lesser, though not actually completely elevated, comparatively lesser. Yeah.
Many times nowadays we get combination pills also, which a kit containing 1 gram of azithromycin, secnidazole, 1 BPD and fluconazole. Such combinations are also available. Many times we are not very sure whether it is this vaginitis is caused by single microorganism or multiple. Many times people are shopping from this place to that place, receiving haphazard treatment and having resistance to the drug. So many times combined regimen is more frequently used nowadays.
Yeah, the
because
compliance with secnidazole is definitely more than metrogyl.
more than,
But still, we should start from the basic. That's why.
and
as Dr. Swati told very correctly, because see, when again I remember it was the central ministry when we had again another meeting when this syndromic approach long back when I was present that time actually it was discussed. They thought about the rural masses where, as she said very correctly, and that's the advantage of having people also practicing at the smaller places. The compliance, follow-up, all those things are absolutely out of dictionary when it comes to the rural practice. And their syndromic approach is again a wonderful approach to manage these cases.
Yes, many a times what happens when patient comes with chronic vaginitis, she has already gone to some doctor, she has already received metronidazole, clindamycin, locally, orally, everything. So many a times some other drugs like we use in practice and she is also associated with urinary tract infection, is also there, chronic urinary tract infection, even bacterial vaginosis is there, cervicitis is there many of the times. So a combination of other drugs like ornidazole and ofloxacin will also help many a times. Sometimes we can change the drug also.
I just want to add, during pregnancy, do you have a question of during pregnancy?
Yes,
there is a question.
we have a question. The next question is for Golwalkar madam. Is maintenance of perineal hygiene important, and what guidance you give to the patients in your practice for perineal hygiene? And do you advise intimate vaginal washes as a routine for the patients?
Yeah. Maintenance of hygiene and precautions for hygiene are more required in case of teenage girls, because in this condition many a times, even though they are not sexually active, they come with symptoms of vaginitis, and more so because of their nowadays fashion for western clothes which are not suitable for our environment and our temperature. So first and foremost thing is use of loose undergarments, cotton undergarments. Usually key point in hygiene is to keep the area dry. One must not use any soaps or detergents or scented products for cleaning of perineum. After bathing, usually with lukewarm water, not very hot, not very cold, every time it is patting and drying of the perineal area going to help us. If there should be no use of intravaginal contraceptives, if the male partner, if she is sexually active and male partner is diabetic or having history of STD or contact with multiple partners, use of latex condom also will act as a precautionary measure. No douche, no vaginal wash, that will alter the pH of the vagina in becoming more alkaline, which will help in lodging of infection more commonly, because it destroys lactobacillus, which is a normal inhabitant of the normal vaginal flora. Change of clothes very frequently, and during night time, it is better not to wear any undergarments so that it will be more airy and not getting moist. While urination also, she should be sitting, leaning forward, and urinate with the legs apart. These are a few precautions one may explain, which is more important in case of young girls and teenage girls. Deworming also can be a major, because sometimes worm infection also causes vulvovaginitis in very young adolescent girls.
Yes, thank you, Golwalkar madam. You have rightly explained how the importance of hygiene, because prevention is better than cure. Keeping the genital area dry is the key point. And if we give some time in the OPD and explain how to keep the perineal hygiene and how to avoid soaps and detergents to keep the important, maintain the vaginal flora, then these small points will be of much use to the patients in preventing vaginitis. Thank you, Golwalkar madam.
Anyone is advising use of vaginal wash, intimate vaginal wash like V-wash, or to maintain the pH of genital areas?
We don't.
Advice, but they watch on the TV and they themselves use it.
So what will be your advice if they ask whether we should use those wash?
I never prescribe that. Yeah.
If at all they are very much keen on that particular part because of bad order, the external use is okay, acceptable, but not the internal douchage, which is absolutely not advisable, because that will definitely change the flora.
External, because that will not that will be for good for her feeling, and it's good, it's not bad, but only thing not internal, because that will definitely disturb the
direct this media that not to show such advertisement on daily use, because patient don't know when to use and when not to use. Routine girls, they are using it just watching the television. So such ads should be banned, or there should be proper guidelines when to use or when not to use and how to use for
Yeah,
them.
there should be.
Very rightly said. Dr. Khare, sir.
माझा आहे का? Okay. Question 6. Then for Dr. Khare, what are probiotics and what is the use? Does probiotics have any role in vaginitis?
Okay. According to WHO, probiotics are microorganisms which are adequately, when these probiotics are used adequately, then it will give or confer a positive effect on the host. It will have a good effect on the host. These like lactobacilluses, which are normally present on vaginal flora, and bifidobacteria, bacteria which are present on the in GIT. These probiotics act like the mechanism action of these probiotics like they produce lactic acid like to maintain the vaginal pH. Then they boost the immunity of the host. Again, these are the good bacteria. So they will compete with the bad bacteria for the food nutrition which are available there. In that way, they will inhibit the pathological bacteria. Again, these probiotic bacteria will adhere to the receptors of the mucosa. So by competing to the adherence of the receptors, they will inhibit the adhesion of these pathological bacteria to the mucosa. In this way, these probiotic will these are useful for the host. And for selection of criteria of these probiotics are they should not have allergy or induce any immunologic effect to the host. And while ingestion, they should be resistant to the acid and pancreatic juices, so that easily they can pass to the GIT. And they should not have any adverse effect on the this, host. And bacteria which are used like lactobacillus acidophilus and bifidobacteria.
So do you prescribe these probiotics in vaginitis?
When you are using antibiotics, because these are probiotics means pros for life, and antibiotics which inhibit the normal flora of the guts. When the antibiotics like amoxicillin, when you use amoxicillin, it will inhibit the normal flora of the GIT. So we have loose motion. Along with amoxicillin, we are using Moxtec and CV. Like this combination we are using. And when we are using this antibiotic, along with that you should prescribe probiotics. And when we have bacterial vaginosis, in bacterial vaginosis there is a altered vaginal flora. In that case we can use these probiotics.
So we should use probiotics.
Not routinely.
So should they be prescribed along with for vaginitis along with the routine prescription, or should they be used only in recurrent cases?
In recurrent cases. Initially we should try only antibiotics.
Okay.
And which route you will prefer? Oral?
They can be when the patient is diabetic, or in perimenopausal patients also.
Yeah,
route is orally, and recently they are trying under trial that intravaginal rings are available, but they are in clinical trials.
Yes.
Or probiotics are used orally only. Nowadays we are available with oral capsules only.
Vaginal preparations are also available, and if we have to use oral, then we have to prescribe that those for at least for 2 months, then only those are effective. And for vaginal, 6 to 8 days vaginal probiotics are used.
Natural
Yes.
probiotics are curd and milk. It's a natural
Yogurt.
probiotic. So
Yogurt
that
you can use.
we can ask her to add milk or a vati of a kator of curd in her daily diets.
Yes, and even if it is a complicated vaginitis or the patients are diabetic or postmenopausal or more prone to have recurrent vaginitis, then we can, after the course of the routine antibiotic, we can give probiotics to prevent the recurrence. Anyone wants to add any?
One interesting thing I came across, these lactobacillus are responsible for secretion of lactic acid to maintain the vaginal pH. Some of the lactobacilli also secrete, in addition to lactic acid, they also secrete hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is a good bactericidal agent, and that is the reason why recurrence is less common when you are using probiotics. This is one more interesting point that I came across. Not only lactic acid, but also hydrogen peroxide is secreted by lactobacilli.
Zuventus is having, I don't know the
One,
name.
it is called as Evanu.
Evanu is
That
available.
that needs to be kept at a temperature of 2 to 8 degrees. They are advising that you can use it for 7 days. I haven't used it.
There is a preparation called Totalis.
Madam, myself, I've never used it.
Asking in the practice, we get patients who are getting repeated. We give fluconazole, we give metronidazole, we give itraconazole, and still after 10 days she is there and you don't know how to face such patients. Therefore, here you advise to give them a probiotic. It's really helpful. Therefore, I'm asking whether you have a vaginal probiotic use, because nowadays, up till now, which I was using an oral probiotic, which has to be given for a minimum 28 days. That has to be at least. Then there's a useful of this, and they are quite costly also.
Yes,
To give it, yes, they are costly. But you, in spite of doing a smear, in spite of doing a culture, they keep on coming with the itching, with discharge. 10 days again, this is OPD, and you don't know how to treat.
Yeah, addressing to this particular point, in our practice, we use this probiotics in 3 ways. One is the oral, those capsules which we use. We use the vaginal preparations which are easily available nowadays, and we use it for 8 days post-menstruation because that will take care of the flora. And nowadays, even the ampoules are available which need to be drunk. So those actually we can use, and that also gives a very good result. Only thing, those are little costly, but they claim that even for any other antibiotic usage, not only vaginitis, it gives a very good results. It is also available nowadays. We started using very recently, since last 2 months, and found a wonderful result as far as the patient's compliance and effect is concerned.
So it will be
Cost is almost 45 rupees per actually that one ampule. That's why it's a bit costly, but
what is the
quite
name of that?
Immuflora. It is Immuflora.
Immuflora.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you all the panelists for the good discussion on this probiotic, because every now and then we come across such patients, and sometimes it happens that the patient rotates so much times that 2 to 3 times she goes to other gynecologists and comes back to us again. And we are in a dilemma now, what to give to this patient, what therapy to give to this patient, because she has already had everything.
Correct. Very good, actually, the point, and even what Dr. Mrs. Hamre told is very true, that we give it for a quite good number of days and still the patient comes with the recurrence. Here comes the role of the predisposing factors, which we need to address very, very strictly. And suppose we investigate, we may be able to find out certain predisposing factors. Yeah.
We'll move on to our next case. 52 years old postmenopausal multiparous patient. She's presenting with intermittent vaginal discharge. She's having complaint of dyspareunia, pricking pain in the vagina, and having pruritus. So this is to Sadhna Deshmukh, madam. How will you evaluate this patient?
Hello. Yes. These postmenopausal patients, I would like to ask the history of duration, severity, and whether she has postcoital bleeding along with it, whether she has urinary complaints, history of diabetes, or any drug intake. Then, of course, I will examine the cervix and vagina very carefully. I'll look for the dryness, the loss of rugosity, and whether there are any petechiae on the vagina. Of course, to rule out other things, I would like to do her pH and wet mount to rule out bacterial vaginosis and candidiasis and trichomonas. In these patients, we will always find less number of superficial cells, less than 30% because of reduced estrogenic effect. And of course, pap smear is done if it is not done in previously in this patient. We all know that the senile vaginitis is due to reduced estrogens, which is less than 25 picograms and causing a rise in pH. Can I have the next slide, please? One more slide. Yes, to use, hello. Hello. Can you, I would ask her to use, sorry, can I have the slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Seven number.
Yes, okay, I will continue. I will ask her to use lubricants which are, just sterile lubricants like Johnson KY jelly during her intercourse. I would ask her to continue her regular sexual activity, which would improve the blood circulation of the vagina. Then I would like to advise, can't you display the slide? Okay. I would like to advise her treatment in the form of estrogens. The mode of estrogen treatment would depend on her other associated symptoms. Like patient, hello, am I audible?
Yes,
madam.
Yes, you're audible.
Shall I continue even though the slide is not there? The previous slide, please. The previous slide. Okay, this is the wrong slide which was displayed. Okay, I would like to continue even though the slide is not popping out.
7 number case. 7 number case. मागं घ्या.
Actually, he had a display. Yes, that's it. No. Treatment of.
Next.
Okay. The treatment of previous slide, I think, previous one.
Previous one. Next slide.
No, okay. Yes. Hello. I would like to go. Yes. Please stop now.
Please slide out.
If the patients have associated symptoms like hot flushes or urinary, here I would like to go for oral hormonal replacement therapy. We need not go into the details of this because it is out of scope of this topic. And if they have only vaginal symptoms without any infection, then I would go for vaginal estriol cream, which is 1 milligram per day. Or I would like to go for skin creams are also very good nowadays. You get a 7-beta estradiol cream, which has to be applied on the skin daily. And of course, we have to treat the associated infections if they are there. We have to just remember that the contraindications are breast cancer, estrogen dependent, liver diseases, thromboembolism, and history of endometrial carcinoma or uninvestigated PV bleeding. So mainly I would like to go for estriol vaginal creams, which are, very helpful in these patients.
How long you will advise this cream and any other?
Here, in general, initial days, I would advise continuously for 14 days. and maybe we would like to taper it off using 2 to 3 times per week as maintenance.
An addition of probiotics in such patients?
Definitely.
Yes, if the patients are not relieved, then maybe you can add to improve the vaginal flora. But I would say that oral probiotics are more useful than local preparations, because these oral probiotics colonize in the perianal area and then they enter the vagina, giving a better result.
Thank you, madam. Milind sir, are there any terminology like non-infectious vaginitis, and what are the causes of non-infectious vaginitis?
This is basically because of irritation, what we call non-infective acute vaginitis, but it's basically vaginal inflammatory response, which could be because of the foreign bodies. As we had seen the very first case of young girl, there is every possibility of, some foreign body, because nowadays we know that many of these girls also masturbate. And that time there is every probability that some foreign body must have gone, that irritation causes the non-infective actually vaginal discharge. And the physiological, that we know all those conditions from puberty to menopause, all those physiological conditions can lead to non-infectious excessive vaginal discharge.
Now we'll go to our next case. The next slide, please. Case number 8. This next case is for Golwalkar madam, a 32 years old female, complains of recurrent vaginal infections. She is para 2, both LSAs tuberectomized. She has been treated by 2 gynecologists for the same complaints. She has got no relief. She took other pathies treatment also, like Ayurvedic treatment, homeopathies, and the complaints are the same. Now she has come with a bundle of prescriptions. How will you proceed? And is there any role of culture? Are there any other investigations to come to a certain diagnosis so that we can treat her?
Yeah. Now this becomes a case of recurrent vaginitis. Here, what are the lacunae? I will have to go through all the papers which she has collected all the way. Most probable cause is untreated sexual partner. Many times husbands are reluctant to receive treatment, or the treating physician is not conveying properly that the husband should be treated, and untreated husband is more common. So first and easiest way is to advise treatment for both the partners. Then one must know why she is having recurrence. Nearly 30 to 50% of the cases of bacterial vaginosis are prone for getting a recurrence. So I will go into the detail of the history, whether she is having history of diabetes, altered blood glucose levels. She has immune compromised situations such as HIV, receiving antibiotics for other reasons. Even use of antibiotic haphazardly also disturbs the vaginal flora. So one must add probiotic into the prescription, whether there is any history of use of douches and all, and sometimes immunoglobulin modulated allergies are also there, such as history of asthma and all. In such cases, even using of antihistaminics like asthma also can give better relief for them. So these are the causes of recurrence of vaginitis, and in taking them as a recurrent case, one must use antibiotic for a longer time. That means she has to take 6 months treatment. Once in a month, metronidazole once in a month, 2 gram, or 3 days of fluconazole per month for 6 months. Prolonged treatment is needed in that case.
Yes, thank you, Golwalkar madam. You have rightly explained that once a
Other
patient
pathies, homeopathic and all, one doesn't know whether they have used steroids. One must be very much aware because other pathies people, the content of the medicine we don't know. And they are very fond of using steroids for itching everywhere in the body. So use of steroids also may add fuel to the fire.
So in recurrent vaginitis, it should be our aim to find out the cause of the recurrence, because there might be some cause which we are missing, and finding out the exact cause, like some immunodeficiency or a diabetes or untreated partner, the cause should be treated. Okay, thank you, Golwalkar madam. Anyone of the panelists would like to add anything on this?
Theoretically, culture and sensitivity should be done. There are labs who do this culture and sensitivity. Ideally, it should be done, but I don't think that anybody has done till date. Yeah.
Here I would like to share one case. She is a case of recurrent vaginitis.
Next slide.
Next slide.
This one.
And we
previous
did.
one.
Next slide.
This
Next
one.
slide.
Plus,
And we did culture sensitivity, vaginal swab for culture sensitivity, and it is said that you have to investigate the partner also. So we did semen culture, and what we found is same organism. Those are E. coli with same sensitivity to the antibiotics. So prostatitis could be the reason for her recurrent vaginitis. So definitely culture sensitivity should be done if no other treatment is working in such patients.
Here, hello.
Yes, who wants to add something?
Yes, yes. Here I would like to add something. Hello.
Yes, madam.
Yes,
Am
you
I
are
audible?
Yes, madam.
Yes. Here the question was recurrent vaginitis, but I have seen in patients where they have severe vaginitis with lot of discharge in the vagina. Generally, in these patients, they take a long time to respond to antibiotic therapy. So I clean the vagina with betadine swab. I know it may, hamper the flora again, but it is my experience that the patient's irritation reduces immediately and they very well respond to the short antibiotic. So I repeat, by 2-3 vaginal betadine swabs, I clean up the profuse discharge which is there and then put her on antibiotic therapy. That so I do it.
Betadine.
I mean, when there is copious discharge, 3-4 times, that is my personal experience I would like to add. And patients are relieved quite immediately when there is severe vaginitis. That I do.
We use
For that matter, betadine vaginal pessaries are also available. And in case of non-risk primary line of treatment, there are other lines also described in the books, such as use of nystatin.
Yes.
Even gentian violet works very well.
Gentian violet, boric acid.
Dilute it and then apply.
But now we are getting this gentian violet.
Yes, we get it. But
because previously we were using it, but nowhere nowadays it is mentioned that you should use gentian violet. Okay.
Thank you.
In recurrent vaginitis, not able to diagnose what is it after culture also. Laser works wonder. In 3 settings of laser, we get rid of this recurrent vaginitis. And even in postmenopausal patient, because of dryness and atrophic vaginitis, laser is a wonderful new collagenesis and rugosity comes back after 3 settings, and repeated vaginal infections go away. Okay.
And again, there are many papers of similar sort, the use of lasers in the chronic vulvar vaginitis, and they found in such cases, the resistant cases, the good results.
Now the next case, Dr. Shashikant, a pregnant patient in her early pregnancy. She is coming with vaginal discharge. It is the only her concern. No other complaints. But what do you feel? If this is normal, and how will you counsel that patient
Only thing
in
what,
early pregnancy?
yes, in early pregnancy, we know that why the vaginal discharge is there, as we have seen the physiology from the beginning. Estrogen levels will be very high, and estrogen is the responsible vaginal discharge in leukorrhea patients or normal patients. So due to the high levels of estrogen, it is very obvious that these patients will be having leukorrhea, but it will not be associated with any pruritus, any itching, any complaints along with this. So we have to only counsel the patient that this is normal. This wetness will be there throughout the pregnancy. Only if it is associated with any foul smell, only if it is associated with any pruritus, we need to treat this patient. Otherwise, this will be the normal
How
discharge.
will you treat in first trimester? What are the drugs you will
If
use?
it is associated with pruritus,
Yes,
then
if it is infectious.
if it is infection, I will use, see, local drugs I will use. Uh, Either I will use clindamycin locally or clotrimazole.
Clotrimazole.
Yes. For first trimester. From second trimester onwards, we can use metronidazole,
Okay.
short course.
So, Sadhna madam, would you like to add the treatment of vaginitis in pregnancy?
Yes. Can you display the slide, please? Yes. Here I would like to say that we should not consider all the discharges physiological, because when a patient complains of excessive discharge, it is mandatory to do a PS examination in all symptomatic patients to rule out the pathology, and if necessary we need to smears to confirm, as we know that the severe vaginitis, vaginal infections can cause abortions, PPROM, preterm labors, and chorioamnionitis, especially in bacterial vaginosis. And also in neonates, complications like RDS or genital infections or necrotizing enterocolitis is very common. You know, with Trichomonas, genital infections in neonates are common. So in these cases, firstly, we have to thoroughly give the antibiotic therapy for vaginosis and all the infections properly. We know that vaginosis is very common. We have to ask history of smoking, and we should ask to stop smoking, avoid douching of the vagina. And there are many studies which show that prophylactic clindamycin ovules in the 100 milligram per day for 7 to 10 days, or oral clindamycin 300 BD for 7 days in each trimester can prevent PPROM. Again, there are many studies. This is one study which was conducted at Bagalkot, Karnataka, and they have seen that they are administering clindamycin in every trimester. At the end of first trimester, we can give oral clindamycin, but in first trimester, if there's infection, we can give ovules, vaginal ovules. And they have found that the incidence of PPROM is very less in these studies. Also, one more point I would like to add. In severe cases of bacterial vaginosis, probiotics which are given for 8 to 15 days in every trimester improves the, reduces the risk of preterm deliveries.
Thank you, madam. Milind sir, you were in those guideline panel, and it is mentioned in the guidelines that it is recommended to screen for increased vaginal pH during pregnancy. Please share your views.
Yeah, because that time this vaginal glows with the tip for the diagnosis of the pH of the vagina was available, and that's why we recommended, suppose people can use it, they will be able to diagnose the environment of that particular vagina, whether it is prone for the infection. And basically, one more point I wanted to add what Sadhna said is about the cervical length. There was another study whereby they said that they correlated this vaginal infection with cervical length, and they realized that those cases with BV had a reduced cervical length, that there's more chances of abortion or the premature labor. And considering that those that usage may be useful, suppose you find a discharge with pregnancy and with a higher pH, we can use the, we can treat that particular discharge to avoid all these complications what she narrated, from abortion to the neonatal complications.
So I would like to share two important meta-analysis regarding the use of probiotics in pregnancy. Next slide. Yes. And they have studied more than 1,500 pregnant women. And it is found that there is no increase in adverse fetal outcome, no increase in incidence of miscarriages or malformations, and no significant difference in birth weight, gestational age, or incidence of cesarean section. So it is advised that use of probiotics is helpful in pregnancy with vaginitis.
Yes. Now we will go to the last case of this panel discussion. This is a case of with recurrent vaginal infection, and she's counseled for hysterectomy at some other place. This question is for all the panelists. Anyone can answer?
We want to get the answer whether we will go for hysterectomy. How will you counsel for such patients? Because they are very stubborn patients and they are already counseled about the hysterectomy in very different words like sadlai, kujlai, anything.
In recurrent vaginal infection, my favorite topic that we should refer patient to me for colposcopy. And after that, if nothing is there and if chronic cervicitis is there, I have treated so many patients.
We will restrict our discussion with vaginal infections only. Cervix is normal. No other pathology is found. Only vaginitis.
We have done colposcopy and we have ruled out CIN and everything.
That time we can go for cryotherapy and we can save her uterus. If
that is for cervicitis. But for vaginitis, will you go for go ahead with hysterectomy?
Not at all. Not at all.
I would like to say one thing to the patient. If you are coming for cervicitis, if you are coming for vaginitis to us, and if you underwent hysterectomy, it will not relieve your symptoms.
So that is the counseling.
So that is the only thing. You will not be relieved of your symptoms. It is your decision at the end.
Agree that no hysterectomy for vaginitis.
As you rightly said, madam, they are very stubborn. They want to get hysterectomy done. Just counsel this way that you will not be relieved.
Yeah. Yes.
We can consult our patient like this. We are not going to remove the vagina from where the discharge is coming. So it is useless to remove the uterus. कानात कचरा डोळ्यात केर आणि कानात फुंकर असा उपाय नका करू.
Also, valid thing, because vagina we are not going to remove, so we'll have to tell them. But at the same time, whenever she comes for discharge, naturally, as we all do, we always have our investigative approach to rule out the dysplastic changes. Yeah.
Also, I would like to explain her. Sorry.
Yes, madam.
Sadhna, madam. Yes, Sadhna.
Okay. Also, we would like to counsel in the other way that what is the risk of surgery and anesthesia for the patient where it is not indicated. So we have to also explain the risk of surgeries and anesthesia risk. That is I would go.
We should take. We will not. We should counsel her. Yeah, anesthesia.
They have come only for a second opinion that we should also opine.
That is the only thing. Straight say no when we feel that it is not needed. Explain, counselor.
Yes. Society, I think we can take awareness programs to elevate that particular fear, and we should convey to the entire society as well as to the rural population If you remember, we 2000, we used to go to all the smaller places like Vairag, Mohol, Akkalkot, and Dr. Mrs. Hambre was, you remember, we used to travel, Manik Guram and three, four of us with pediatrician also, I think Hemant. And we used to convey all these myths and misconceptions. And that created a lot of change in the practice of the general practitioners also, family physicians also. Suppose they don't utter the word of hysterectomy, 50% battle is won.
Thank you, sir. And this is the end of panel discussion. I congratulate all the panelists for wonderful discussion. And this is a very much informative panel discussion with lot of take-home messages, I feel. Thank you all the panelists.
Rather, we should say thank you to the president and our secretary. So this has definitely increased our insight in this topic. So more and more panel discussions should be there, what I think henceforth also. Thank you very much.
Thank you all the panelists
Pearls
for
of
this
wisdom.
wonderful discussion. Now I would like our chief guest, Dr. Sulbha Zamre Madam, to give the pearls of wisdom. Our Sulbha Zamre Madam, she is the consultant of Zamre Nursing Home and managing high-risk obstetrics. She has worked as a lecturer in BMGMC Solapur, worked as an honorary consultant in Dr. Kotnis Memorial Railway Hospital and Dr. Chedgupkar Hospital, and she is a past president SOGS and has worked and arranged at various conferences and given lectures on radio and to the general public. Her areas of interest are high-risk obstetrics and ultrasonography. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Aboli. I don't know why she has given this responsibility to, I think looking at my gray hair more, she has told me to give a pulse of wisdom. I think we had enough and very interesting discussion just now and had a lot of clinical inputs. And therefore, I think I'm not going to talk because I think the leukorrhea is a part of our OPD. Everybody sees the patient right from the child, which is coming to you, to the adolescent girl, to the reproductive age group. You get a menopausal patient and they have a different causes. We are not here, even I'm not here to discuss that, and either I'm going to give you any advice. I'm just going to discuss few of the cases which I started my practice in around 81, last 40 years I'm practicing, and the cases which I found it very interesting, which has sometimes give you a little, what you say, think of what you are thinking and give some advice. Says you learn something from that cases. That is the case. I'm going to just talk few of the cases before you get bored for listening more about your clinicals. As we are seeing that the leukorrhea, very, very common thing which we come across. This is a very initial start of my practice. I had a patient around 35 years, female, and she had a history of white discharge. She had little blood stain discharge occasionally, occasional postnatal bleeding. She had a normal menses, not heavy menses. Routine examination, she wasn't or completed her obstetrics. She was around 35 years, have a tuberculosis. I put a speculum and I saw a very good cauliflower growth on the cervix. And the moment I saw cauliflower growth, I was just past my MD, very eager to operate. I have to have a Vardham hysterectomy. A very good case hai aaj. Abhi Vardham karne ko milenga. And then I did my PV examination, found that the parametrium is free, more happy, did a PR, the more happy still because everything was free. And then said, the things which was going in plan, then when should we post is for our DEMS? And when we will start, we'll convince her for doing an hysterectomy. I talked with the patient that there's something looks a growth and it's going to be most probably a problematic. Let's have a biopsy. And then we'll decide what is to be done. And the most probably you will require a surgery. They were worried, 35 years female, telling about doing an hysterectomy or some other procedures. We did a biopsy, and the sixth day on the biopsy report, it was a tuberculosis of the cervix, has a big growth, absolutely disappeared, giving anticox for within 1 month, the whole thing disappeared. Therefore, that is the one thing which I learned the lesson from them, that all leukorrhea, all cauliflower growth on the cervix are not malignancies. Therefore, that is the thing, and therefore not to be hesitant or not to be very eager to come to any diagnosis unless you investigate the case and treat it. There is, of course, there's a lesson I learned. Another patient, again, was one couple, young couple, brought a 6-7 years daughter. They were literally, the mother was literally in the tears. And she was telling, madam, this girl is having a lot of vaginal discharge, there's a redness and all things. And they were feeling, they were the Muslim, from the Muslim community, and they were a combined family, many people at home, and they were saying mostly it is a sexual assault. They were so embarrassed to tell me all that, and really worried. The father was worried, and there are 10 people around her. And we took her inside. I said, let me see what it is. And it was a little redness of vagina. There's a false smelling discharge. And she was very small girl, not allowing to give examination. Then we give some sedation to her and put a very small pediatric nasal speculum. And to our surprise, whole vagina was full of sand. It is a foreign body which was there for a long, this is a thing which the children do for that. And then it was under anesthesia, everything was removed very slowly. The antibiotic was given and the girl was fine. And the parents were so happy. Before that, they had so many other thoughts in their mind. Therefore, I think these are the things which really you feel are really reliving to them. And we also happy that we are treating such patients. Third case this was a lady, she was sarpanch from the place near Madha. And she's a lawyer by profession, very educated girl, female, had completed her family life. And she said, madam, I have some vaginal discharge and I'm getting some little heavy periods also. And the vaginal discharge is little cumbersome. It's difficult for me to work. I have to use underpanties repeatedly changing. I said, you better come and examine unless we see. She said, no itching, madam. There's nothing itching. I just asked her whether it is a yellowish and a foul smelling. She said, no, but I'm getting a lot of discharge. Occasionally it is a blood stained also. Especially after postcoital, the next day I get the discharge with a little blood stain. I said, okay, you come to me and then we'll examine. Otherwise, before that telephonic, it's very difficult to explain you what the cause of this discharge. She wanted to go to consult a cardiologist for her hypertension in the morning. Therefore, I given an appointment in the evening. She was with the cardiologist in the morning, treated her. She had a stress test done, everything, all investigation was done. And she had a sonography done there. And from there, around 6 o'clock, 6:50, she said, I want to go back to Karmala, and it is too late now. And I have everything done. This is the thing, UAG report. She WhatsApped me the report that uterus is normal, the vagina, everything is normal, pelvis is normal, and abdomen, nothing in that. And then now everything has been seen, we prescribe me the medicine. I say, unless I examine, how can I prescribe you the medicine? But she insisted, no, I have not told. I said, I will not do that the way. Sometimes you have to say curtly no. I said, no, I cannot discharge. You come within 5 minutes, I will relieve you. And when she came and I saw put a speculum, and it was a fibroid polyp, which was peeping through the cervix out in the vagina, which was totally missed by abdominal sonography, where the bladder was empty. Therefore, a lesson again. I remember this case because when I was undergraduate in JJ, we had a Dr. Sankolkar, head of the department, and she always used to say, if you become a general practitioner in future, buy at least one same speculum. Always she used to say so loudly, I remember that if you can see the clinical examinations are something which is very, very important. I think the year when we are graduated, when we are practicing, we are doing more of clinical judgment. See that this practice of going for more investigation or the investigation which are more specific. If suppose you do a transvaginal in this patient, definitely no would have missed it. But if suppose that day I would have advised some, she was lawyer. And then I don't know what would have been happened after she came, and this simple polybectomy has relieved whole of the problem. Therefore, the message that the investigation will be a secondary. What is important is your clinical knowledge, your examination. That is something which is very, very important. Nothing to replace that. Therefore, teleconsultation, nowadays, what we are talking about, I don't think the doctors from my age may not agree to a teleconsultation at all. Maybe that bond will not develop between the patient as well as the clinical examination we will miss. Should I have one more case, or should we stop? I think. Another patient. This is very little interesting case that I'm telling. This was a patient who was on 65 years, female, postmenopausal. She was a Laman patient, and she was brought by her son for having a discharge. He said, I asked him how long. She said discharge to bahut din se hai, many days, but now it is blood stain. Therefore, we are more worried because now it has blood stain. The discharge is there for years together. When I asked her before, I thought of, she was very thin, lean, short, female, old, 65 years. I said, is there any prolapse? She said, prolapse to bahut din se hai. For last 25, 30 years, I have a prolapse. I said, okay, let's see what it is. Then when we saw, it was a huge, big procedentia with a very big cystocele, whole everything was out, and it was a decubitus ulcer, ulcerating the whole prolapse uterus. And we thought that we will repose it, we'll give some antibiotic, and then we will operate afterward. Then we tried to reposit it. It was so difficult. It was not possible to go inside everything because years together it was out only. It was edematous and all that. She was admitted for a 1 day under sedation. Next day, I tried to repose it back in the vagina, give an antibiotic, put some iodine solve inside to keep it, and then antibiotic. And then later on, we will think of surgery. By the time the decubitus ulcer will heal and it has a better vagina to operate, better things to operate. Therefore, we did it that when we was repositing inside, it was some crackling sound I was getting. I put it inside with a very lot of effort under sedation also. Later on, she had some problem with eye. Anyway, it was a 15 days gap to operate later on. Therefore, she said, I'll have my cataract surgery done and I'll come back to you after 15 days. I said, fine, because anyway, we don't have to do for a 15 days for her till her ulcers are healed and she's feeling better. After 4 to 5 days after discharging her and she's undergoing a surgery, she again had a cataract surgery. She came back, and to my surprise, she has a handful of stones. Absolutely, this much of stone she brought. They're ranging from a small sand to this sand, and this much of stone. How did it came from the urethra? I don't know. No, that has come from the urethra. That urethra can dilate so much. When the patient postmenopausal, already urethra is similarly this because of estrogen is small. On the contrary, it is become. But with that, I don't know what is. But then she came with, and she has collected all, and then she was showed to me. This was something which is really interesting. These are also patient came for a discharge, white discharge only. And the last case, another case. This is a patient which was brought to one of my patients who has been hysterectomized with me for some postmenopausal problem. She had some polyp and all that, and we thought it is a bad cervix, and she has some cytological problem. We did a hysterectomy. Therefore, she was from India, Kannada speaking. Therefore, the communication was little problematic. But anyway, she brought that this female, and she was the same as a postmenopausal patient. And the patient, I saw her investigation report. And this investigation report was telling the ultrasound was having an pyometra, big uterus, uterus and the collection in the uterus. We tried to see, I put a speculum, whole my speculum got filled with the yellowish color fluid. It wasn't pus, it wasn't false smelling, it was only a discharge which was will. Again put it, again it got full. It was literally coming from the vagina, flowing from the vagina, and therefore she was really in agony. We put, and I tried to see a cervix, anterior vaginal wall retractor. I could not point out cervix anywhere because it was so flushed with the vagina cervix. You cannot see even the external all somewhere. Then I tried to push it so much that fluid will come somewhere. No? The fluid has to have some way. There we could manipulate a very small hole, tried to put something inside. It was very difficult. Then under anesthesia, and she was taken in the anesthesia, then anesthetic is given. After anesthesia, we could not hold it with cervix, just hold the vagina and tried to negotiate a very, very small, I think 1 or 2 or 3 number dilator. It was very difficult, but still I could get it. Before that, I tried to put some laminated tent. I have some laminated tent with me. I tried to put it, but it was not possible. Laminate tent also has some diameter of around 3 to 4 millimeter. It was not going inside also. And to do a hysterectomy where I was not convinced at all that she had anything with the carcinoma, because she had CT done, no, not CT. CT was done, and then she had a UHG report which was not showing anywhere any growth anywhere. But she was insisting that only hysterectomy has to be done for her. Why you want to all do this? She was not ready to give a consent. But anyway, under anesthesia, we tried. I could dilate. I could negotiate my 1 or 2 number dilator inside. And to my surprise, everything drained out. Everything drained out, and then tried to put a little more, given an antibiotic. Very luckily, she never turned up with any discharge up till now, and saved of the hysterectomy. I think these are few cases which has puzzled me also many times. Therefore, at end, I feel that is what is important is proper history taking. I think that doesn't go without saying. The history is important. What I'm saying is right from the child, right from the small child which is coming to your consulting, right? We often see more infective cases in the reproductive age group, where they are sexually active. But other than that, the postmenopausal patient don't correlate immediately, because this is in the patient. Any discharge age group is a malignancy. See, it has been bombarded on them. They have only correlation that, therefore the patient come to you for hysterectomy only. In convincing them that the case which we saw with recurrent vaginitis, similar way, any discharge from the vagina which is coming at any age beyond 35 or 40, is always correlated with, I think it is our duty as a gynecologist to convince them, take a lot of awareness. I think with Rohini, who was, they have worked on the Save Uterus program, where they have convinced, or they have a meeting gatherings, and then tell them what I tell the patient always, that this menses are kavach kundala for you. Your heart is protected, your skin is protected. Why you want to have lose a uterus for the discharge, which is a non-specific? See, sometimes we can understand the discharge remain there in spite of you do many treatment, I think. But if the discharge is not giving you a problem, is not itching, not giving you any burning, nothing, some amount of discharge can be just ignored. That can be tell. It is depend on the individual patient also. Few, especially this prepubertal girl. These girls, we have to tell about the physiological discharge, like ovulation time they will. And I feel that what we lack is a counseling. I basically feel we are lack of counseling for counseling such patient. And in my practice, 2 in 40 years, I don't think I have ever done a hysterectomy because somebody wants a hysterectomy. I have always convinced and on the contrary counsel the patient, and the counseling has helped a lot. When they have a faith in you, they definitely listen to you. They will definitely, but only thing what is that, what Milind is saying, that underlying pathology has to be excluded very perfectly, doing all investigation. I think, and the investigation also has to be very, what do you say, there should not be blanket investigation. Each and every patient you do everything is not that way is correct also, because nowadays I see there's cheat coming from person doing, one patient had abdominal pain, patient had an X-ray abdomen, patient had a barium meal, patient had a CT abdomen, cheat with them along with X-ray chest. It is not a joke. This is happening. We see when you do any investigation about it, when you do a transvaginal, it has to be transvaginal. You cannot replace it with the abdominal UAG. You are going to miss. I have one patient who is a Marwadi patient, very good family, going to a very good physician of the society, where patient having a lower abdominal pain. And the patient happened to go to a radiologist, did an abdominal sonography, found nothing. Patient came to me again because she has delivered with me. And then I just put it, I said, I was doing a sonography, I put a vaginal probe. It was an ovarian malignancy. You will not believe. It was an ovarian malignancy full with the fluids in this. Because see, some things you are definitely, if you are not choosing a proper investigation. Therefore, the history, the clinical investigation are the very important before you go to the different investigation about CT, about colposcopy, about directed biopsy, fractional, n number of investigations. And I'll tell you one thing, that the patients are very happy to do investigations. They will never say to investigations because they feel that spending something, they are getting something. To spend a 500 rupees consulting to me, they may not be happy. But doing on CT and MRI, they're happy because they're getting plates and they're getting everything, and they feel that everything. Therefore, the investigation, if you tell the patient, no patient is poor. I remember when the Mirena came in the practice, one doctor who was promoting, I don't remember his name, he was telling that the cost of the Mirena is in your mind, not in the patient. You feel. See how many Mirenas have prevented us for doing an hysterectomy? Tremendous, tremendous. Therefore, I think the investigation should be of prime importance. We should investigate. We should trade. The cost factor should not come when you are really feeling from the base of your mind that this investigation is needed to do a particular investigation. And that's what I feel. And another thing, I take this opportunity that is the responsibility of our everybody, all as a gynecologist, to vaccinate our young girls for a carcinoma cervix. This is a thing which is, and these are the things the patient is coming from the patient. I kept the board in my OPD, and I see that my patients' daughters who are coming to them, they get investigated for getting vaccinated for the cancer cervix. I think that is a good vaccination available. We should advise all of them. I think, thank you very much. That is a thing which I have learned in my 40 years of the practice. And I think we should do more and get our own mistakes. We learn so many things. Thank you very much, Aboli, and all the team for your further advice. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. It was a wonderful experience, what you shared with us. I just want, can you please unmute Bakul Jagirdar, madam? She wants to ask a question to the panelist.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, madam, you're audible.
Okay, I want to, because it is little bit digression from the current topic, but it is related, and so many senior experienced people are there. I want to ask, many of the time we get patients with pruritus vulvi without vaginal discharge. And many of the times they are being treated for candidiasis, local application, oral and drugs, but they don't show any results. So what should be the approach in such cases?
What is the age of the patient? With any specific?
Routinely the reproductive age group, madam. Means many of the patients come without diabetes.
Yes.
Yeah. Here we'll have to think about the other causes of pruritus, as we do for the pruritus ani or pruritus vulvi, and basically allergic conditions, psychosomatic disorders, the local actually skin conditions, all those need to be ruled out to rule out that particular vaginal itching. Quite often it is a psychosomatic disorder, what our skin specialists also agree, quite often opine that way. And we'll have to manage that case as a pruritus vulvi when there is no discharge.
Anxiety is one of the causes for this.
I agree. And the postmenopausal patient, lack of estrogen.
For that, ma'am?
Anxiolytics.
Antihistaminics and anxiolytics.
Okay. And can I share one experience? Today only in Ashwini, we operated her related to this vaginal discharge. We had one patient post-abortal vaginal discharge with a lot of infective blood-stained discharge. And to cut the story short because of the time, actually it turned out to be a submucous, it is a myomatous polyp, which was undergoing necrobiosis, and that was coming out through the vagina. So,
yes.
Hello.
The retained products of conception, but it turned out to be a fibroid.
Yeah, or sometimes even it undergoes sarcomatous degeneration at that age, especially elderly patients.
Bakul, actually, I wanted to add about pruritus vulvi. Even addition of some multivitamins will relieve the symptoms. We have seen this many times. A to Z, like capsules or something, all multivitamins can relieve the symptom.
Okay, thank you so much.
There is one last question for the panelist. Is there any correlation between stress and vaginal discharge, or it is just a coincidence?
I already answered that question. It is vice versa. That discharge causes a lot of stress. That is the thing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. A crisp and short summary for today. In unmarried girls, watery discharge with no symptoms, counseling only. Foul smelling discharge, treat accordingly. In ART cases, try to treat before doing an ART. Deworming in young girls and hygiene maintenance is mandatory. Vaginal wash, use it externally only after advice from your gynecologist. Avoid using in young girls without prescription. Use of probiotics is recommended. Add natural probiotics. In recurrent vaginitis, treat the partners, do culture sensitivity and treat accordingly. Newer treatment, laser treatment has come up. And discharge in pregnancy, do vaginal pH, treat it accordingly and use probiotics. I thank you. I thank Zamre madam and all the panelists for this wonderful discussion tonight.
Thanks.
A very small announcement that we have a CME on ovary in nutshell in association with Aklu Society on 5th of June. That is day after tomorrow. And abnormal uterine bleeding with Baramati Society on 12th of June. Details will be forwarded on WhatsApp soon. I would like to thank firstly our speakers, our panelists, Zamre madam for enlightening our knowledge today. Then our SOGS members who have logged in huge number today. Then I would like to thank our digital partners to broadcast this event successfully, and IMA for providing us this platform. And lastly, I would like to thank Aboli Velankar madam who has given us this opportunity to present to you this academic feast on leukorrhea. Thank you, everyone. I conclude this session for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.